Reppin' Philly ain't a choice, it's a way of life. PhillyGoat.com is your one stop shop for Philly pride. Use the promo code Jim Montgomery for 10% off. Look fresh, stay Philly, Philly Goat. Go Birds. Day in Philly sports history for September 3rd, 2025. I'm your host, Jim Montgomery. Welcome to a Wednesday edition of the podcast. Happy hump day to everyone out there. Today, the hump is not that long, though, as we have Eagles football, NFL football tomorrow, Eagles Cowboys down at the link, and things are looking good for that. Everybody seemed healthy. Landon Dickerson was back at practice yesterday. So that's a good sign, especially since it was not his knee that was having him on the injury report. So a little bit of back tightness. Seems like he's good to go, which is huge. Looking forward to this game. It's going to be a mess. The Eagles did send out a messaging yesterday that essentially said in a very nice way that getting to and from the game is going to be a shit show. I don't know how I'm getting down, what my plan is yet. But I plan on having to do a lot of walking. But they also said, if you're not having tickets to the game, don't come down. And I'm sure Xfinity Live or Stateside Live, whatever it is now, is very happy that the Eagles are telling people to stay away. So, if anything, I think it's going to end up having more people come down. But, hey, we'll see what happens. The other news out of Eagles camp yesterday was that the Tush Push now has an official sponsor. Dude Wipes is the official sponsor of the Tush Push. And I love this for a couple of reasons. One, the Eagles are just doubling down and embracing it with all the stuff with the Packers and all the teams trying to get rid of it. They're like, okay, you didn't get rid of it, so here we go. We're doubling down. But the other genius move in this is the fact that the NFL is all about making money. The NFL is all about the brand, the shield, whatever you want to say. The fact of the matter is now they are able, just making sure the mic was right. They're able to now take that this offseason if the NFL does try to make the push to ban the Tush Push again and say, well, now you're taking revenue away from us. And I know Roger, you don't mess with his wallet, you don't mess with his money and things like that. So that is, I think, from the Eagles' standpoint, a very, very shrewd and smart business move now. But Dude Wipes, the official sponsor of the Tush Push, I love it. Absolutely love it. All right, so some quick housekeeping with the Eagles. The first episode of the Brotherly Birds Breakdown is available. Right now, it's only available on Spotify and YouTube. Had some issues with the distribution on Apple. I think I figured it out before I started recording here. Hopefully, by the time I'm done recording this, it's available on Apple. Just keep checking throughout the day. It's just a matter of everything syncing up. I hope. I was on the phone or on the chat with Spotify all night last night and going into this morning, and I felt like Howard Stern. Like, it was the most bizarre, ridiculous thing. They're telling me that the actual dates that I started posting this podcast as well as creating the podcast link for the Brotherly Birds Breakdown, they're like, that's not correct. I'm like, here is the email that you sent me confirming both. So enough of that. It is what it is. So if you are an Apple listener, which I know there's a good chunk of you guys out there that listen through Apple, the Brotherly Birds Breakdown should be there at some point today. I'll know more once I get this posted and start my workday. But it is available on YouTube. It is available on Spotify. The Brotherly Birds Breakdown, Kyle and I broke down the game, gave some picks, had a little bit of fun with the dumpster fire that is the Cowboys organization. So that is up and ready to go. So share it, spread the word. And I think it gives it's a different kind of look at a pregame show where we don't sit down and break down stats and look at this and talk about trends. It's just essentially what the title of the show is: two brothers talking about the Eagles Cowboys games. So that is available now, at least on Spotify and YouTube. I know that for a fact. I'm pretty sure by the time this day is over, it should be available on Apple. Apple's usually pretty good. Hopefully, it does not interfere with the distribution of this podcast on Apple. So it's hump day. Hopefully, everything works out. But check out the Brotherly Birds breakdown, available hopefully wherever you get your podcasts, but at least on Spotify and YouTube. All right. So Phil's back in action tonight against the Brewers. It's always weird when they have a day off. It seems like we're so used to seeing them every day that when they do have a day off, it seems like it's been a year since the Phillies have played. But Phillies Brewers tonight. Aaron Nola on the mound for the Phils. Hopefully he continues his trajectory of good starts. I would like to see him come out with a very solid start and not have his normal, typical blow-up Aaron Nola inning. But a huge game for the Phils, both in the National League East and National League standings. Mets won last night, so the lead in the NL East is now 5.5 games, with another big 4-game series looming soon on the horizon next week with the Mets. But Phillies Brewers tonight. We actually have some Sixers news. I've read an article in the Inquirer this morning that Jarrett McCain is on pace to be back by training camp, which is huge news for the Sixers. No word on Joe, but I do think with VJ Edgecombe, Jarrett McCain, and Tyrese Maxey, it should be more fun to watch the Sixers this year than it was last year. So I'm all for it. Looking forward to that. So Jarrett McCain on pace to be ready for training camp. All right, yesterday's trivia question. In honor of Tony Franklin becoming the first barefoot kicker to kick a field goal in an NFL game, I asked you, the Eagles had one, but not one, but two barefoot kickers, Tony Franklin, and who was the other one? And that would be Paul McFadden, who was a rookie in 1984. You can still picture him with the barefoot in the Kelly Green jersey. I had the football card, but Paul McFadden was the other barefoot kicker for the Eagles. All right, be sure to follow me on social media, Jimbo_Mont on Twitter and TikTok. On Instagram @PhillyJimbo. Subscribe to the YouTube channel, Jimbo_Mont. If you are a subscriber on the YouTube channel, then you know that the Brotherly Birds breakdown dropped at midnight. About 7 of you have already watched between 12 and 5 this morning, which is awesome. Spread the word. This podcast, but specifically the Brotherly Birds breakdown, as we're trying to grow and get the listeners from here to go over and check that out. So just spread the word. If you're a new listener, welcome. If you discovered this through the Brotherly Birds breakdown, even better. Glad to have you here. But all of that stuff helps the algorithm out, and I truly, truly appreciate it. All right, September 3rd. First, we're going to go back to 1995. And on this day in 1995, the Eagles opened the season with a 21-6 loss at the Vet to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. It was the debut of Ray Rhodes and one Ricky Waters in the backfield. And it was a rough day for Ricky. 17 carries for 37 yards. Did fumble twice, losing one. Fumbled on his very first carry as an Eagle. And then he had not one, but two alligator arm plays where kind of pulled up because he was afraid. And I was watching some of the clips yesterday, prepping for today's pod, and the announcers were, I wasn't sure who the announcers were. I didn't recognize them. I feel like it was sort of the D team on Fox, but they were laying into Ricky for both of those passes. Obviously, the crowd booed at one point. They were chanting for Charlie Gardner because Charlie Gardner came in and was having the success that everybody thought we were going to get from Ricky Waters. And then after the game, famously had that when asked about it and said, for who, for what, I'm going to make plays. It's a long season. Endearing himself very nicely to the Philadelphia fans. Ricky did rebound, though, that season, ran for almost 1,300 yards, made the Pro Bowl, led them to the playoffs. They took the wild card, and that was that dismantling of the Lions in the wild card on New Year's Eve at the Vet. But did Philly ever really warm up to Ricky Waters? It was kind of the absolute worst first impression you can make with this fan base. But that does lead us to today's What If Wednesday, brought to you by Lotwin. Get your 3D custom hype chains. These things are great for youth sports. They are good for fantasy football, winner and loser trophies. I'm getting one for my son for his 10th birthday. So all kinds of uses for that. Use the promo code TCCPOD to take 10% off of your order. But for What If Wednesday, we're going to take a look at Ricky Waters. He spent 3 years here in Philly, ran for almost 3,800 yards, 31 touchdowns. That was good enough for top 10 in Eagles history. And didn't really there's not a whole laundry list of running backs for the Eagles that were great. So what if he had stayed longer? He left here and went to Seattle, had 3 more 1,000-yard seasons before, I think he played 4 years in Seattle total before retiring. So he still had a lot of tread left on the tires when he left Philly. Would he have? I don't think it would have changed the 3 seasons he was here. The season after he left was that dreadful year with Ray Rhodes last year, where they were. I think they went 5-11 or whatever it was, and they didn't have a quarterback. They put all of their stock, and I can never remember the guy's name now. I want to say Brad Gable, but it wasn't Brad Gable. And it just didn't work out for the Eagles. But would he have lasted into the Andy Reid era? Because when Andy Reid came in, you had Deuce Staley, who had 2 1,000-yard seasons early in his career, 99 and 2000. Or not 2000. 98, 99, I believe. So Deuce took over for Ricky. But if you had Ricky there, does that help ease the transition with Andy Reid? Does that help Donovan McNabb out? Because nothing against Deuce. I love Deuce. But Ricky Waters is a much better back than what Deuce Staley was. Deuce Staley obviously was a fit for Andy's offense. Could it have worked out? I mean, I don't know. Would that have sped up the Donovan McNabb trajectory a little bit? I don't know. I mean, it's an interesting thing because Deuce Staley certainly helped in the McNabb's first few years really carry the load. He had a good season that last year of Ray Rhodes, but you throw somebody like who's dynamic and has sort of that swag. Does he keep Donovan in line? There's so many different what ifs you could go with here, but I don't know. What are your thoughts on this? What if Ricky Waters has stayed and went into the Andy Reid, Donovan McNabb era? I think you can there's a lot of people here, like I said, in Philly who are still pissed off from that debut and could never get over the 4 for what. I know people are like, nope, like you don't do that. That's a me player, this, that, and the third. But it's an interesting take. So what are your thoughts? What if Ricky Waters had stayed in Philly instead of going to Seattle and crossed over into the Andy Reid Donovan era? 267-495-8531. That's a Back to the Future voice and text line. Get that. Anything else Philly sports related off of your chest. All in honor of the anniversary. I guess it's the 40th anniversary now of For Who, For What. But that happened on this day in 1995. This day in Philly sports history is proud to be a part of the Clashing Conferences Sports Fan Network, a growing community of diehard fans turning their sports passion into something special. Whether you're looking for unique shows, want to launch your own podcast but don't have the time, or need production services, the ClashingConferences.com has everything you need. Explore fan-driven content, become a member, or tap into their media services to level up your brand. That's ClashingConferences.com, where fans' voices get heard. All right, continuing our trip down Philly sports memory lane for September 3rd, let's go to 2000. And speaking of Deuce Staley, the Eagles opened up the season in Dallas as 6-point underdogs. The temperature was 109 degrees. It was even hotter on the field. And it was, at the time, I didn't check to see if there's been hotter, but at the time it was the hottest game in NFL history. The Eagles famously drank pickle juice before the game to help stay hydrated. Andy Reid opened the game with an onside kick, which the Eagles recovered. This was McNabb's first full year as starter. Staley had himself a day and said, "For who, for what, Ricky?" But Deuce Staley ran for 201 yards and a touchdown. Defense sacked Troy Aikman and Randall Cunningham 6 times, including 2 by Hugh Douglas. They intercepted Aikman once, Randall once, and Aikman ended up getting knocked out of the game with a concussion. Pretty much finished, I believe this was one of the very end of his career where he's like, "I'm done." The Eagles did go on to finish 11-5, go to the wild card that year. But this day in 2000, the famous Pickle Juice game where the Eagles drank pickle juice to stay hydrated, came out and whooped up on the Cowboys. Deuce Staley running for 200 yards in the process. Donovan McNabb kind of having his statement game where, you know what, he was here, and that's where we kind of got the idea that, you know what, this guy is going to be pretty good. And then on top of it all, they ended Troy Aikman's career down in Dallas on this day in 2000, the Pickle Juice game. And then fast forward to 2006, the Phillies split a doubleheader with the Braves. They won Game 1 8-7 in a walk-off, and then lost Game 2 3-1 in 11 innings. But Game 1, Ryan Howard was the story. He hit 3 home runs, number 50, 51, and 52 on the year, going 4 for 4 with 4 RBI, becoming the first Philly to hit 50 home runs in a season. Shane Victorino with an RBI single in the 9th to win it. And we've been talking a lot about underrated, underappreciated players, which we'll get to another one here later. But Ryan Howard, I don't necessarily think he's underrated, but certainly I think could be the top most underappreciated athlete. But on this day, he hit 3 home runs, number 50, 51, and 52, putting on a show for the fans at the Vet. That does lead, though, to today's trivia question. Going back to that game in 2000 when the Eagles beat the Cowboys 41-14 to open the season in Big D, the Pickle Juice game, Deuce Staley ran for 201 yards. Who led the Eagles in rushing in 2000? Hit me up on the Discord channel, which is the first link in the chat. Hit me up wherever you get your podcasts, as well as on YouTube. Any of my social media, comment on the Spotify, comment on YouTube. But let's get this answer. Who led the Eagles in rushing in 2000? And then finally today, our underrated, underappreciated athlete is Pat the Bat Burrell, a teammate of Ryan Howard. Pat spent 9 years in Philly, hit 251 homers, 827 RBI. He is a World Series champion. He's in the Phillies Wall of Fame. But Pat came in with a high pedigree. First round pick in 1998 out of Miami, where he was the Golden Spikes winner as the best collegiate player in the country. I think Pat, though, the name of his game was he was very inconsistent and streaky. When he was hot, I don't think there was anybody better for a period of time there on the Phillies. However, he would go into long stretches where his slumps were long, if I'm thinking back and just getting frustrated with it. But I think for his career, he was a huge contributor to the Phillies, provided us with a lot of memories. And I think, unfortunately, he kind of gets he's lumped in there with the Bobby Abreu, kind of those underachieving teams under Larry Bowa in the mid-2000s. I don't think Pat ever was going to be the star that carried the team, but he was a good complementary piece. It's just the Phillies didn't have the complementary pieces to put next to him. He was a huge contributor, though, to that 2008 World Series team. He hit 33 homers and 33 doubles. I didn't realize he hit 30 home runs that year, which I knew he had a solid year, but that was one of his streaky years. He went through a good portion of that year. I think, if I remember, late, where he wasn't hitting well at all. But in the postseason, in the World Series specifically, he had one hit, but it was one of the biggest hits of his career. Hit the double that almost was a homer, would have been a perfect way to end his time in Philly. But he had high expectations. as a player. I think when he was hot and on, he certainly met those expectations. He just could not do it consistently. And I'm going to keep this PG. Not going to mention anything about the exploits down at the Irish pub on Walnut Street. We'll just let that one go. But Pat Burrell, underappreciated, Phillies Wall of Famer, World Series champion, got to lead the parade with his his bulldog Elvis on the Budweiser Clydesdales, leading off that World Series parade. Pat Burrell, today's underappreciated, underrated Philly athlete. On this day in 2006, Philly split a doubleheader with the Braves, but in Game 1, Ryan Howard hit 3 homers, number 50, 51, and 52 on the season, becoming the first Philly to hit 50 home runs. Hopefully tonight is the night that Pat Burrell. Hopefully tonight is the night Kyle Schwarber joins him. He's up late editing. He's up late on the chat with Spotify. Tired. Sorry. Also on this day in 2000, it was the infamous Pickle Juice Game, where the Eagles beat the Cowboys 41-14 to open the season. Deuce Staley running for 200 yards in a game. 2,000 yards in a game would be one hell of an accomplishment. And then in 1995, Ricky Waters endeared himself to the Philly faithful, fumbling on his first carry, losing a fumble later, having 2 alligator arm plays, and then saying, "For who? For what?" I don't think his reputation here in Philly ever recovered. He was down at the link at one point last year for Alumni Day, and people were kind of indifferent to him. I think over time, people were kind of just like, whatever. But there were still a lot of people in the crowd that were booing him and still not happy with the whole "for who, for what." So it just goes to show, sometimes you don't get a second chance to make a first impression. This has been This Day in Philly Sports History for September 3rd, 2025. My name's Jim Montgomery. Be sure to go check out the Brotherly Birds Breakdown right now, currently available on Spotify and YouTube. Hopefully soon to be on Apple Podcasts. But go check it out. Get ready for the Birds as they get ready to raise the banner tomorrow and then beat the crap out of the Cowboys. Go have yourselves a hump day. And until next time, I'll see you when I see you.